What is up everyone, welcome back to Mainly Movies, the channel where we talk about, well, mainly movies. So welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be reviewing HBO's The Last of Us Season 1. Set 20 years after the cordyceps outbreak, a damaged older man named Joel is tasked with smuggling a curious and rowdy 14-year-old girl called Ellie across America. Joel and Ellie's bond grows stronger as their journey proves more and more perilous. Now, I'm a huge fan of The Last of Us video game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I play that game at least once a year. The story, the characters, the visuals, it's all top notch. It's one of the most just groundbreaking video games you ever play. In terms of its narratives, in terms of its character arcs, and in terms of just the overall gameplay. So back when Season 1 came out, I was very curious to see how they were going to adapt Joel and Ellie's story through a 9-episode HBO show. And for the most part, it's a pretty faithful adaptation. Now, there are some changes from the game that I do like and some that I don't. But let's get into some of the things that I did like about the show. So ever since the first time I played The Last of Us back in 2013 on the PS3, I knew that the structure of the storytelling would work for a TV show rather than a movie. And Season 1 definitely proves that. It takes all the big moments from the video games that we know and love, and they kind of make an episode about each event, and that's how they structure it, and I do kind of really like that. So just the way that the season flows, I think is really nice. There are some moments where, like, there's some episodes that focus on different characters that kind of stop the Joel and Ellie storyline for a bit, and I feel like we still don't spend as much time as the game, so the dynamic between Joel and Ellie isn't as fleshed out as the game, but for the most part the show does a good job at building the relationship between the two of them. Now, another thing that I really love about the show is they casted the voice actors as small roles. Some are big roles, but some are small roles. Like the voice actress that voices Tess in the video game, she portrays Tess in the show, and she does a really good job, and I honestly feel like they give her character a little bit more than the video game. But Troy Baker appears in episode 8 and he's really good. I mean, again, he's only got a very small role. And Ashley Johnson, who voices Ellie in the video game, she plays Ellie's mother in the final episode of the season. And she's really good, and she has a very emotional, very meaty scene that is quite heartbreaking. Now, just to go off the casting as well, the casting of Joel and Ellie, back when this season got announced, just before it came out, I was a little bit skeptical about how Pedro Pascal was going to portray Joel. And from the very first episode, my mind was put at ease because he does a really, really good job. Because not only does he portray Joel from the video game quite faithfully, but he also kind of brings his own little interpretation to the character, and I think it works really well. I feel like in the game, Joel is portrayed a little bit more tough, whereas in the show, he's more damaged, and we can tell that this is a man that needs fixing. And Pedro does a really, really good portrayal. Now, we'll talk about Bella Ramsey. A lot of people have issues with her. Currently, as I'm making this video, the season 2 is nearly finished, and I have a bit more of an issue with her in that season, particularly. But in season 1, I honestly think her casting isn't that bad. Sometimes she overdoes a little bit of the sarcastic remarks, and sometimes when they use the lines from the games, hers don't really hit as hard, and they don't feel as impactful or as whimsical or as kind of sarcastic as they do in the game. But for the most part, her portrayal of Ellie is quite good. In season 1, she does a really good job with the emotional, more heavy scenes. Now, we're going to talk about some of the episodes in particular. When I first watched the show when it came out a couple of years ago, I was actually one of the people that didn't really like episode 3. Now, for those of you who may not remember what episode 3 was, it was the one about Bill and Frank. And the reason why I didn't really like that episode was because it took us away from Joel and Ellie's dynamic. I wanted to see it grow their bond and relationship a lot more. But then when they cut to a whole episode of Bill and Frank, I was a little bit annoyed. However, when I rewatched season 1 for this review, I honestly think it's still not my favorite episode, but it's my second favorite episode. It's actually quite emotional and just a very well directed episode. It does a really good job at showing like vignettes of Bill and Frank's life to the point where it almost feels like we watched an entire movie of these characters. We see them grow, we see their relationship grow, we see their ups, we see their downs. Just overall, it gives us like a very emotional climax. Murray Bartlett and Nick Offerman do a phenomenal job, and they give some really, really good performances in that one particular episode. But honestly, I gotta say my favorite episode of the entire season is episode 5. Because we spend the first little bit introducing Henry and Sam, and they give us a little bit of a backstory, and that's one of the changes that I did like of this show, which was that this kind of resistance was after Henry and Sam, and I really liked that there was this intensity to their characters. It gave them a little bit more, whereas in the game it kind of feels like you just meet them and you go on this journey and then things happen between the characters. However, in the show there's this whole group, this whole resistance that are after just those two characters, and it's quite threatening and scary, and it gives the characters less time to think and they have to start doing things quickly. But honestly, the end of that episode just left me speechless. Like, in the game, that sequence is already just quite emotional. You know exactly what I'm talking about if you've seen the show and played the game. I think that scene at the end of episode 5 is the best interpretation of the game, or the best kind of adaptation of a scene from the game. The actors that played Henry and Sam just were incredible, and it's just such an emotional sequence. Now, I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that I didn't really like about the show. The first thing is one of the changes that they made, which was they changed the cordyceps virus. Now, when I first watched the show, I wasn't too fussed about it because I knew I could trust the writers that they were going to do something creative with this new form of cordyceps that they introduce, where it's no longer spores, it's no longer airborne, the infection is now spread through these stems. So when I first watched it, I wasn't quite fussed, but now after watching season 2 and they have to kind of introduce spores back into season 2, I dislike the change in season 1 now, because it would have just worked if they just used spores from the beginning. Plus, it also makes the bloaters less threatening because they're now just like big clickers that just run around. Whereas in the game, they throw spores at you. Now they've got like a ranged attack against you, and it just makes them even more threatening. But I think like an infection spreading airborne is horrifying to me, more so than like these stems. Also, even though episode 5 is my favorite episode, one of my issues actually comes from that episode, and that is Melanie Lynskey. I think overall she doesn't really fit in. I don't really like her casting too much. However, there are moments where I can buy her performance as just kind of like a crazy lady who wants revenge. But then there's moments where I just generally think it's very weird and unusual casting. And sometimes I just really couldn't buy her performance, which is a shame because I wanted to kind of see more of this resistance that are after Henry and Sam and see how they survive and their kind of story. But Melanie Lynskey's character, I think her name was Kathleen or something, she wasn't really that intimidating, and I feel like anyone could have just stopped her. But they needed a leader of that resistance. I just would not have cast Melanie Lynskey. Anyway, overall, that's really all I kind of have to say. That I think as I was watching it, there were some things that I was thinking of, things that they could have changed, or things that they could have done a little bit more similar to the games. But for the most part, like I said, it's quite a faithful adaptation, and I do honestly enjoy the first season of this show. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is the set design of the show is really good. Some of the shots where they show like the ruined cities and all that look really good. Some of them are, you know, a little bit too heavy on the green screen. But just the actual set designs when they're in decrepit buildings and places that are all falling apart, they do a really good job immersing you in those locations. And honestly, I gotta give the set designers a lot of credit for this show. But anyway, now to give Last of Us Season 1 my overall rating, I'm going to give the show a 4-star rating. So yeah, I honestly did really like it for the most part. A lot of my issues with this show are in Season 2, which I think the final episode is this Monday, so hopefully I'll be able to have a review for that season next week. Anyway, thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe, and hope to see you guys in the next one. So stay tuned, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.